the days leading up to the 20th anniversary of his record label in early September, Big Machine founder Scott Borchetta spent some time looking back through memorabilia from its earliest days. In the collection, he found a note from his very first meeting with the label's very first artist, 14-year-old Taylor Swift.
I think I found my Mick Jagger.
Swift's debut album sold 40,000 units in its first week and officially surpassed 1 million sales by the following June, and that's when Big Machine really got rolling.
We wanted to take over the world. That was the mission.
By the time the pair went through a contentious and very public split in 2019, they had mostly achieved that goal. Swift was one of the biggest recording artists in the world, and a few years away from becoming a billionaire based solely on her music. And Borchetta had built one of the biggest and most successful independent record labels in Nashville, selling the majority of it that year to Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holdings at a $300 million valuation.
We didn't do anything to hurt anybody. I would never do that. But I'm never going to win that conversation.
Since the sale, the 63-year-old Borchetta has poured his money into the city's real estate and its biggest passions: country music, auto racing, and Tennessee whiskey, boosting his net worth to $450 million, according to Forbes estimates.
Are you ready? I can't believe that we're turning 20 this year, but we are.
For Big Machine's 20th birthday during Labor Day weekend, Borchetta threw a concert in downtown Nashville with artists from the label's entire history. A reported crowd of 146,000 people lined the streets and honky-tonks for several blocks to watch, and as the artists greeted and hugged Borchetta going on and off the stage, he seemed nothing short of Nashville royalty.
Everybody kind of talked about Scott like he was a guy that could get things done. And
his ears just seem to be so relevant no matter what decade we're in.
He's so much fun to work with because he has such a vision like from the get-go and just wild and zany ideas to push it forward.
He didn't come in just as a label head of, oh, I'm going to become the CEO of X, Y, and Z. He built it from the ground up, and it's pretty big.
Forbes got a chance to follow Scott Borchetta on Labor Day weekend, from the 20th anniversary concert, around his multi-million-dollar car collection, to the Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix, getting unprecedented access to the man behind the machine.
I had a front row seat to all my dad's successes and failures. And he was first generation radio promotion guy. There was no handbook. You know, they were making it up as they went along. So I didn't realize how much I had learned just by osmosis, just by being around it all the time. You know, we'd have artists over at the house. And until I realized that wasn't usual and very unusual, it's like, oh, okay, well, the Beach Boys are coming over. It's like, okay, Joe Frazier's coming over Sunday, you know, because Joe Frazier and the Knockouts was a song that my dad was working.
Back in 2005, Scott Borchetta was a relentless and successful promotion executive at Universal, but was convinced that his bosses were out of touch with the times.
I could see that physical distribution was dying a terrible death, and they just kept pouring more money into it. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense to me. Then Napster. Napster was so powerful. And I remember this very important conference call when I was at DreamWorks, and the legendary Mo Austin, one of the greatest record guys of all time. He was Frank Sinatra's guy. He signed Prince, he signed Hendrix, he signed Madonna. We're on this conference call, and I said, Mo, have you been on Napster? I said, it's amazing. He goes, Scott, is that on your computer? I'm like, yeah. He goes, get it off there and do not put it back on. And in that moment, I'm like, they don't know if this is a flower or a weed, they just want to kill it. And literally, to me, that day, all those guys were done. I can't wait for these guys. They're not there, and I'm not going to go down with this ship.
Borchetta left to start his own record label, and his timing was perfect, as then New York Attorney General Eliot Spitzer was cracking down on payola, where major labels were paying under-the-table bribes for radio play. So suddenly, the only way to power a hit record was through relationships and determination, things Borchetta had in ample supply. Andrew Kautz, now president of Big Machine Label Group, but then its first back office manager, remembers it well.
I knew he could drive #1 singles. He'd proven it. He in radio was a huge factor in that.
Coming out of Universal and DreamWorks, you know, I was considered the #1 promotion guy. 20 years ago, radio was still central. You still had to win at radio. I had so much goodwill at radio. And so having that kind of lever to pull was a huge leg up. And that kind of lever doesn't exist today like it did 20 years ago.
I knew his drive and his desire, and failure was not an option. You know, it was just absolutely, we are going to make this work. I just remember it took us forever to find the time to actually get to lunch because he was always, you know, was busy and our schedules didn't let. But when we did sit down, you know, I just remember him being bigger in life. I really learned how to bootstrap, and I think that was something that really appealed to Scott. Was we just talked through that process and talked through the name Big Machine, and you know, we kind of chuckled and said it was kind of funny, you know, don't you think? Because we're, you know, just this little engine that could. And he called me a week later, and we walked through this building. Literally, there was a rock band sleeping in here with sheets on the windows and mattresses on the floor. And he goes, "This is where we're going to be." And I was like, okay, let's do this. I've always considered myself the kind of the head mechanic for the machine and understanding how it works so he doesn't have to. And I think that's really how our relationship works well, is the yin to the yang, is all the things that he does forward facing. I love kind of being in the background.
20 years ago, Borchetta had no idea just how big his quote unquote Mick Jagger would become. He had first heard Taylor Swift play in the listening room at Nashville's Bluebird Cafe in late 2004 and offered to sign the teenager to his new label, even though it didn't officially exist yet.
One of the things she loved early on is that it was a secret. You know, that we had this kind of secret society about what we were doing.
Swift agreed, and Borchetta set about raising the money needed to get Big Machine up and running.
I created a book and said it's worth $10 million, and I'm going to sell 40% of it and keep 60. And so we raised 4 total.
But after his business partner dropped out and other potential investors didn't bite, Big Machine was 2 months away from insolvency. That's when a wealthy Pittsburgh businessman named Ray Pronto, who just months before had heard Swift sing, stepped in with a $3 million investment. Taylor's father, Scott Swift, a longtime financial advisor, invested another $500,000, and country music superstar Toby Keith added some more, agreeing to share a back office with his upstart Show Dog label.
I said, well, how bad could it be? You know, let's see how this all works out. And, you know, we started off with $3 million in investment, and, you know, we had a pact.
I told Andrew once we got up and running, I never want to fall below $1 million in the bank. I don't want to have to go raise money again.
Every week I'd come in and he'd sign the checks, and we'd just kind of keep it going. And we started to burn through a lot of things. We had a lot of early on kind of hiccups.
Big Machine launched with music from Danielle Peck and Jack Ingram, gaining a #1 radio single in just its second release.
Jack Ingram had had some success as a Texas artist, so while he hadn't had a hit, he had some awareness. And Danielle was just a very dynamic, you know, young artist at that point. And you know, at that point too, also, I knew that Taylor was the biggest that we had at that point. And so I wanted to put a few songs out and get the team road ready. By the time we got to her, I wanted us to be ready. And it was no disrespect to the others, but she also wasn't exactly ready just yet. So as we continued to work and develop her, I was getting the team developed as well. So when we finally, you know, put everything together, you know, boom.
When we opened, MySpace was the thing. And so when we initially took Taylor out to radio, this young girl that nobody knew at radio knew who it was, but yet there'd be 100 little girls lined up out in front of the station waiting to meet her because she would get on MySpace and she would talk to them and say, hey, I'm gonna be here. I hope I get to see you. I hope I get to meet you. And so she had that nailed way back in the day.
Taylor's first album comes out in October of 2006. And we get our first big check from Universal in January of '07. And I walk in Andrew, he's smiling like a Cheshire cat. And I said, what's our balance? He said, $1,017,000.
I walked in and I had a $3 million check. He just kind of smiled and he said, here we go. And it was just from then on, nonstop.
Big Machine and its subsidiary brands, like Valerie and Nashville Harbor, would go on to launch the careers of numerous country music superstars, including Florida Georgia Line, Thomas Rhett, Lady A, Brett Young, Carly Pierce, and Riley Green, just to name a few.
I was really new to Nashville when labels started to come down to my shows, and Scott was one of the first people I met when Big Machine offered me a record deal.
If you look at even his young roster and what he's done with Riley Green is different than his marketing plans and label plans for Jackson Dean, or what they've done with Carly is different than a Mackenzie Carpenter. All artists today that are making their own way in a very competitive landscape.
My first impression of him was he's tough. He's somebody who has built his business from the ground up, and he needs to see a true artist before he really buys into somebody.
Scott's one of those guys that he's not involved in my career every day, but when he needs something, he's the guy that picks up the phone and can move the needle.
What I love about Scott is he didn't sign me for my first single. He signed me as an artist. He believes in my artistry. I think he believed in what I was doing a decade from then.
When I first met Scott, he struck me as a very, very kind yet serious and to the point individual.
He's a visionary. He thinks way outside the box that, I can't even think out of.
Borchetta and Big Machine also found success selling new music from established stars like Garth Brooks, Rascal Flatts, Tim McGraw, and Sheryl Crow.
He knows how to navigate different avenues, and he's just brilliant that way, And the other thing is he gets people on board, and it's infectious.
We're having hits with Danielle and Jack and the Taylors exploding. And then I get the call from Garth Brooks in 2007. We've been open, not even 2 years. And he wants to put a record out. He's coming out of retirement. He's been retired for 7 years. And then I had a conversation with Jewel. She wanted to do her first country record.
Scott's gift is marketing, promotion, but I also think it's dreaming. Like, I'll come in and I'll pitch ideas to him, and he has lots of ideas, like on the spot, and then he'll say, okay, I'm gonna think on it, and then he'll come back with more ideas, and it's fun to be around people like that.
I first met Scott Borchetta back sometime in the mid to late 90s. Is Scott intense? Yes, definitely intense. And I think you see that intensity both in how he approaches racing and certainly how he approaches his artists. And I think that's why so many of us weren't surprised and excited in 2005 when he broke out really as an entrepreneur in his own right, running Big Machine label group 20 years ago. And I think one of the things that's interesting for his artists is while he is an entrepreneur and thinking cutting edge and everything he can do to support his artists, he also is one of the people in the business who today still has a strong and deep relationship with country radio. There's no question in my mind that the relationship Scott built being a promo guy early on paid off in the early days of Big Machine. They've gone from being the indie breakout kind of in 2005 to being part of the establishment. Scott joined the CMA Board of Directors in 2008, and I believe he might be the longest serving record label head now in that group. And so while he really started as an outside the box indie, he's taken that to be a mainstream label with 20 years under their belt. I think Scott, whether he gets this from his racing or whether he just gets it from his business acumen, he sets out to win. Obviously, he's been able to explore both his passion for racing and his passion for music and actually blend them together in things like the race this weekend.
As Big Machine continued to grow, the definition of success for a record label was changing dramatically, driven primarily by the transition from physical ownership to digital consumption.
We were selling $10 products. So you drive a single to #1 and you drive people to Walmart to buy a $10 product. When iTunes started, it was kind of crazy. It's like our first challenge was going from a $10 product to a $1 product. So arbitrarily, Apple decided that a single was worth 99 cents. But we didn't really have any say in it, and that's what it was decided. And the interesting thing was at the same time, a ringtone that was 15 seconds of that same song was $4.99, which made no sense. And their whole idea of disaggregated downloads really changed the landscape. So now we were literally in the singles business. And then fast forward, streaming starts. And we tried to kill it. I don't think we understood, what it was, and it wasn't at scale. It literally was taking us from a $1 product now down to a penny product, not even a penny product, a fraction of a penny.
Borchetta went so far as to pull Swift's music from Spotify for nearly 3 years, between 2014 and 2017. And during his 2 seasons as a mentor on American Idol, he wore attention-grabbing outfits designed by his wife Sandy, adorned with the words, "Music has value."
I got to step in and do what I love to do too. And every week I had a new outfit for him to wear on camera, but I would plan it all out and show him what materials I was using. And most of the time, he didn't see it again after I showed him a hide of leather or whatever it
Until
was.
10 minutes before show.
Yeah, and
There it is.
I would run right into the studio and I would have it hold it like up like this so that he could jump in it and go. But I knew it would fit him. I have all his patterns in, so that was but that was really fun.
Tell me about Music Has Value a little bit.
So it really started when we pulled Taylor's music off Spotify.
Right.
And it was a conversation starter because people would say that, go, well, what is that? So I kind of used it as a way to open the door. And it's like, look, the value of music is changing dramatically. Don't forget that music has great value because it's been completely devalued. The whole value structure has changed so dramatically. So I just wanted to kind of nicely put in everybody's face and make them ask the question. And here we are. You have songwriters and artists just screaming, and it's not Spotify, it's just what's happened in streaming.
Sure.
The whole value structure has changed. We used to sell CDs wholesale for $12.02 to Walmart. Now we're fighting over $0.04 per stream.
The streaming revolution changed music's business model from 80% of revenue being made in the first 10 weeks after a release to 80% or more of the revenue made on the long-term catalog, which is why, in 2018, Swift wanted to reacquire the publishing and royalty rights to her first 6 albums, which was a rare but not unprecedented request for artists with the leverage of global superstardom like a Garth Brooks or Jay-Z or U2. But for Borchetta, the catalog by then accounted for a significant portion of Big Machine's total value. Swift would later say that Big Machine's offer was to earn back one album at a time by producing new albums, but Borchetta claims that the final iteration of the deal would have given Swift the rights after a 10-year license back to Big Machine. The two sides could not reach an agreement. So that November, Swift left Big Machine to sign with Universal's Republic Records in a deal that gave her ownership over all future music. By all accounts, Borchetta and Swift separated on friendly terms. In a text message Swift sent to Borchetta that he shared online, she wrote, "What we accomplished together will be a lasting legacy and a case study on excellent partnerships. I still view you as a partner and friend, and I hope you feel the same." Things soured a year later when Borchetta agreed to sell Big Machine to Scooter Braun, the record executive who discovered Justin Bieber and went on to manage Ariana Grande and Demi Lovato. The deal valued Big Machine at $300 million, with Swift's catalog accounting for an estimated $140 million of that total.
I think at that point, looking at where the landscape of music was, and at that point, Taylor had gone to Universal, and Florida Georgia Line were imploding, and I'm looking at everything. It's like, you know what? We're at a really interesting peak right now, and it just felt like the right time to do it, because of Taylor and I at that point, it was very friendly when she left. We talked through it. And with FGL, those were our 2 biggest acts. And so while we're doing great success with Thomas Rhett, Tim McGraw, Riley Green's coming, etc., it just felt like, okay, this move, it feels like the right time to do it. Initially, what Scooter and I talked about doing, was we had a lot of big ideas, and then COVID hits and the world changed, so we didn't get to do a lot of things that we had initially planned on doing. So again, his life changed so dramatically. He went through a marriage and other things, and so his focus changed. Mine didn't. We kept on grinding and building the Big Machine.
Swift called the deal, quote, "my worst case scenario," because of her longtime distaste for Braun and his then client Kanye West. In an incendiary social media post, she took direct aim at Borchetta. This is what happens when you sign a deal at 15 to someone for whom the term loyalty is clearly just a contractual concept. And when that man says music has value, he means its value is beholden to men who had no part in creating it. Were you surprised at all by the backlash after the sale?
Certainly wasn't expected, It was unfortunate and not cool. We didn't do anything to hurt anybody. I would never do that. But I'm never going to win that conversation. So I'm like, there's nothing I can do about this. Somebody I really care about, and it happened. And so you deal with it the best that you can. But there's, that kind of social following, everything else. It's like, I'm just going to have to ride this wave, man. And we did. And it was uncomfortable for a little bit. And I think people who know me know that I'm not a bad guy. I would never do anything to hurt any artist ever. And so it was one of those moments in life, we live in bright colors. Every once in a while you're going to take one in the gut. And so what should have been a really awesome celebration wasn't. But, in the big picture for everything we did, it gave me the opportunity to do a lot of things that I wanted to do in my life. And so, I can't look back with regret. It's just a decision that I made, and I live with it.
In a blog post intended to set the record straight, Borchetta said he's never experienced Swift's ill will toward Braun, but that did little to slow the social media battering he received from the legions of Swifties. Borchetta says that he has not communicated with Swift since that day. At the time of the sale, Borchetta owned 90% of Big Machine after buying out Ray Pronto in 2015, while Scott Swift and Toby Keith still had their own shares. The cash and stock deal gave Borchetta a 13% stake in Ithaca, allowing him to profit when Swift's catalog was sold again in 2020 to Shamrock Capital for an estimated $360 million, and when Braun sold Ithaca entirely to Korean entertainment powerhouse HYBE in 2021 for just over $1 billion. All the while, Borchetta has maintained his position as Big Machine Label Group CEO and given a similar message to each set of new owners.
I really wasn't on the front lines of that transaction, but it was the same message. Just leave me alone, you'll be really happy.
Meanwhile, Swift's public war over ownership ended in May when she purchased the rights to her early catalog from Shamrock. Forbes estimates she paid close to the $360 million price tag of the previous transaction.
It was always the intent. This wasn't the path, but it was always the intent. So I'm so happy for her that she has those records. We made those records together, and you see how proud of them that she is, so I think it's great. There's a lot of things that really converged to get us to this moment, and the internet uncovered a lot of the business, which isn't a bad thing, and it was never meant to be a secret. But, some people have looked at a lot of these things as being bad. It's like, well, this is how we got here, so how do you want to change it? How do you feel better about it? The Beatles own their own music. The Rolling Stones, Garth Brooks, they just didn't own it from the beginning. So it's really rare. Usually that's something you earn. Because what a lot of people don't understand is how much money we have to invest in each artist, whether they win or not. So when I'm in Vegas, people go, "Are you gambling tonight?" I'm like, no, I gamble $1 million at a time back in Nashville on new artists. And so no, we've just kept on doing what we do, because I'm still a student of the game every day. And it's still fascinating to me. There's a #1 record on Monday and I want it. So, there are other things I was able to do financially that have been a lot of fun. More racing stuff and, just the things I personally love, my happy place, with my cars and all that. I went to my very first IndyCar race at 8 years old. It was the California 500. And that totally imprinted me. So really, if you look at the verticals of my life, they're still pretty much the same. It's still racing and music.
The difference now, of course, is money. Borchetta owns a NASCAR Xfinity Series team called Big Machine Racing and a spirits company called Big Machine Distillery, plus a collection of cars and racing paraphernalia worth more than $50 million. He stores the best of them in a Tony Stark-style garage he built several floors beneath the $8 million European medieval-style castle he owns on the outskirts of Nashville, one piece of an estimated $100 million real estate portfolio. We're here in the garage, in the Batcave, and one of the things that stands out walking around here is the amount of racing memorabilia that you have, fire suits and helmets specifically. When did you start collecting those?
Probably about 15 years ago, but over the years, certain things would come my way, but really started taking on the passion about that time of, collecting certain things about drivers that meant something to me. Like the suit right behind you is from Dan Weldon, who was a two-time Indy 500 winner, and we sponsored his win in 2011, and he later passed that year. So very special suit and helmet, and a lot of these guys.
I see Jeff Gordon here.
Yeah, Jeff. Early in the year, I said, "Man, I really want to get a race-worn helmet from you." And he goes, "Man, let me look." And so he and Sandy worked together, and Jeff gave me this helmet for my birthday this year.
Yeah.
So that's one of the actual, Rainbow Warrior suits to go with the car.
And I know you're a big Ferrari guy.
Yeah.
And definitely got some Ferrari suits down here. Is there one that stands out to you?
Well, always being a Michael Schumacher fan, these are matching suits from when he and Rubens Barrichello were teammates. and very special. And then a lot of them, here's Paul Newman. You know, Paul Newman is one of my heroes.
Right.
You know, being an actor, but also a real race car driver.
Right.
Very respected.
Yeah.
You know, I really related to that with myself of just, you're coming from another part of the world into racing and earning that respect. You don't just get it, you have to earn it.
No, that's the thing. I was literally about to ask you. Paul Newman, clearly famous, clearly people wanted to hang out with him, but he got his racing bona fides, and I kind of feel like you've been able to do the same thing.
Yeah, it was a lot of similarities, and I got to spend a couple days with Paul at the racetrack here in Nashville, and it was really one of my favorite memories about the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. So, and they told us when we came and said, talk racing, you'll have a great time. You talk TV and film,
doesn't get
game over.
Yeah.
And so we got to be racing buds for a few days. It was really a special time.
Yeah. As we go down to the main level here, also you're collecting actual racing cars.
The first car I'm going to show you is a 1967 All-American Racers Eagle that was built by Dan Gurney, but driven by Bobby Unser.
Okay.
And so this car here is one of the winningest Eagles of all time, chassis number 210. And it was the Owners Championship winner in 1967, and then part of the Winners Championship group of cars in 68.
Yeah.
And he raced this particular car with a few others all the way through 1971.
Yeah.
So a very important car in the world of IndyCar.
According to one close friend, Borchetta has, quote, a bad case of Ferrari-itis.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Ferrari. You know, I've always felt a kindred spirit because it's a race car company first. They sell road cars so they can race.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've always just loved that because it's all about, you know, making sure that technology gets to the road cars. So they've been so advanced from day one because these cars were built on the racetrack for the most part.
I think people will be amazed to hear that you do drive
They all
these
get
cars.
driven, absolutely. Yeah. They'll die if you don't drive them.
Right.
You know, they need to have circuits and circulation, all the fluids, everything. If you let them sit, it's going to be a bad day when you try to bring them back.
And not just on joyrides out and, back, you'll drive them to work. You'll
Oh,
drive
yeah.
them to the office.
Yeah.
You'll drive them to run errands, right?
Well, not so much errands, but I'll drive them to work and they get their weekend drives in.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, they get driven.
On an afternoon joyride, Borchetta presses his foot down on the accelerator of a 1985 Ferrari 288 GTO and can hardly contain his joy demonstrating the lurch caused by the twin turbochargers. As for the possibility of scratching or crashing the $5 million sports car, he says, I try not to think about it. These are cars, he tells me. They're meant to be driven. This full throttle approach to life, whether behind the wheel of a high-performance car or running a record label, goes a long way toward explaining Borchetta's diversified business portfolio.
Everything that we do is entertainment. You can put a line through it, whether it's the label, the racing, the distillery brands, it all comes back to culture and entertainment.
Scott, we're here at Big Machine Distillery. First, I want you to tell me how you got into the spirits business.
So it all started around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So in 2011, they had an agreement with Crown Royal and Diageo that actually lapsed. So they called me up and said, hey, if you'll bring Concert up here, we'll trade for the naming rights. So through that, we started a relationship with Crown and Diageo to become part of that race for the next several years. So a few years into it, we're at a marketing meeting. I said, hey, we're a Tennessee label. I'd love to have a Tennessee whiskey. So a couple of years in, this distillery, 10 South, down in Linville, which is about an hour south of where we stand, came available. We went and met with them. The master distiller was a genius. And they, as much as they were a genius in creation, they were non-existent in marketing. And so it's like, we got this. Mm-hmm. And so we started off just really as a vanity brand for the label, and now it's turned into a real business.
One thing I was thinking about was, when you start Big Machine, you're taking on the big labels, right? And now you're starting a Tennessee whiskey brand, and you're taking on, the maker's marks of the world. I guess, was there any, synergy there?
I think so. I always joke that when we started the label, all 13 of us, I didn't tell them that we weren't a big machine. It's like, go forth and conquer, you're a big machine. So I think it's more of a mindset of, we can do anything.
What's different about promoting spirits versus promoting music?
Well, to a certain extent, very similar, because you're looking for the fan base. Okay. Where's the fan base? And now, cutting through the noise, it's become cliche now, but you're always looking for that super fan. If you're not a preference 1 or preference 2 of our artist or our brand, we're not even going to try to talk to you, because we want to find the ones who are the most passionate about the brand and expand that fan base and that client base.
And how is, I guess, this tied in with the other passion of racing now?
Well, this is kind of a pathway to have another brand that we can use in the racing space. To run our sponsorships through the distillery, it also has a great tax implication because we're marketing it. So I'm going to race either way, but now we have a brand that we can put on our race cars. And this year we won the Indy 500 in the national championship with Alex Palou and Chip Ganassi. So it really just gives us more opportunities to market all back. Everything that we do is entertainment.
One of the things I was thinking about was how many celebrity alcohol brands there are. Many of them, they're just putting their label on there. And I think you growing the corn, right? Doing everything, producing it in-house is a bit different. There's not as many folks doing that.
Yeah, it's one thing to do a license, which is fine, but we make it.
Yeah.
We own the distillery.
Right.
So it's not just putting our name on something and taking an 8% back end.
Sure.
This is like, all right, all chips in the middle. Let's go do this. Have you ever had a Tennessee whiskey right from the barrel?
I have not.
All right, so it comes out kind of quick, so.
Okay. That's
a fairly handsome pour right there. So you want to sip, you want to just kind of get a sense of the aroma. You can really smell the wood, some of the syrup flavor, and it's got a great head on it. So
here we go. Cheers.
Cheers.
It warms you up. It warms you up.
That's why I said go slow.
Borchetta had sponsored teams and races before, but in 2021 he started Big Machine Racing, which competes in NASCAR's second division. And much like minor league baseball, there's far less money to be made there. But the Xfinity Series does offer Borchetta a place in the garage, where he has befriended racing giants and personal heroes like Roger Penske and Chip Ganassi.
He's got a great desire to win, but he understands he's not afraid of hard work either. So that's what I like, is he's not afraid to get, roll his sleeves up.
Borchetta was instrumental in bringing the IndyCar Series to Nashville and became its title sponsor. For the past handful of years, he can be seen on the mic at the Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix, giving the pre-race command.
Drivers, start your engines!
We're glad to have him because he brings a different spirit, a different quality to the series, whether it's in NASCAR or whether it's here with us on the IndyCar side. He's not just a one-trick pony, if I would call it. I mean, he's really got much more of a broad approach to business. We took over the track, and he came to me right away and said, what can we do to help you build this track to be better and bigger, and we'd like to be part of that.
Big Machine sponsored me, actually, and the last time I won the 500, Big Machine on the gloves. And we from that point on, we've just been great friends. But when you meet someone that's got that passion for all these things that you love, racing, cars, he's like my brother.
He's built a team, in NASCAR with Nick Sanchez. I mean, I remember when his cars were hitting the wall and he was putting his hands on his head, what am I doing here? But all of a sudden, once you get that first place and get that win, I think he's just further motivated to keep going. And look, he's got a good team now.
The hard thing with a guy like Scott is when he gets in the car, he is so competitive, and you see that. He'll be aggressive behind the wheel. He pushes hard. He wants to win. But then he gets out of the car and he's so nice.
Borchetta got back behind the wheel himself in the fall of 2019, joining the Sports Car Vintage Racing Association, where his 1971 Corvette dominated the field, reeling off a string of national championships. Then in March of 2023, tragedy struck at an SVRA race in Atlanta.
It was Sunday, March 26th, 2023, and we were in Atlanta. Road Atlanta was the track, and it had rained earlier that day. So, it was a bit of a messy day. So Sandy was on her way down. I waved her off. I'm like, you know what, just stay home. I'll be home about 3 o'clock. Let's get this race under our belt. So I'm just kind of cruising, just holding my position, waiting for the track to dry a little bit more. Didn't want to take any big chances. We had a good car. I knew we could finish top 10. And so, go time. So I start passing cars. I'm up to 12th. And Road Atlanta is one of the most big boy tracks that we race. You've got to be completely committed. Literally, when you come up the hill to take turn 11, all you see is sky. And you have to stay in the gas, you're full out, full throttle. And the first thing you see when you come down is pit lane. It's like, that's not the track, wait. Oh, there it is. And then turn 12, fourth gear, we brake at about 325, about 152 miles an hour. Third gear, go to the brake, no brake. And just to make sure I didn't clutch, I just checked the clutch real quick. And then I'm like, I'm in big trouble. So I swerve, downshift, hit the inside wall to try to slow it down. And because it rained, I went through the sand trap. I just skipped right across it and took the wall down.
I got a call from Sandy saying, Scott's had a crash.
It was very scary, and I thought we were going to lose him.
It was one of those oh shit moments for me. I don't want to gross you out on the details, but you know, I got the blow by blow of all the damage and all the things, and I was just like, oh man.
Ray Evernham, a former pit crew chief for Jeff Gordon and a 50-year racing veteran, told me that based on all his years of racing, quote, there's no way he should have survived that crash.
In that moment, I knew I was in really bad shape, big trouble. And so I was knocked out for just a little bit. And when I looked down, the whole car had come in on me. And it was bad. You know, my feet were both pointing up at me. There's a frame rail here. My left foot was literally under the frame rail. And it was surreal. I'm looking at my tibia, smiling at me. I'm like, wow, this is bad. And track worker comes over, starts talking to me. Can you help me with your seatbelt? Help me with my seat, because we have a collector right here. Can you help me with your helmet? And we're talking. He goes, we're gonna have to cut you out of the car. Do you know what day it is? You know where you are? What's your name? And yeah, and so I'm pretty conscious, pretty coherent, tons of pain. And so when they start cutting, the sawzall's coming right for my foot. And I'm like, hey, hey, hey. They thought my feet were up here. They didn't realize how bad it was. So fortunately, I wasn't knocked out. I remember them cutting me out, lifting me up, putting me on the gurney. They're cutting the race suit off of me. And I couldn't breathe. And so just things, it's like, I remember lifting up my mask and saying, I can't breathe. Do you have a bigger mask? Try to relax. In that moment, I just said, let go. If you're dying, die. Just let go. Go to the pain and let it go. And one of my mantras when I try to fall asleep, when I can, is count backward from 1,000. So I start counting backward, and my mantra was just get to the next minute. Whatever it is, as soon as you get to the hospital, they're gonna put you under. Whether you wake up or not, you'll be out of this. Just get to the next minute. Just get to the next minute. And so they got me to the hospital, and then I remember waking up and tubes and bars and everything else. It's like, well, I survived. Wow, I'm not gonna let this define the rest of my life.
I called his assistant. I said, just put me on every single one of his meetings. We're not slowing down. Here we go.
So after everything went wrong, things started to go right. So by the time Sandy got to Atlanta, Ray Evernham had a friend at the track, legendary Hall of Fame driver, Bill Elliott. He called Ray and said, Scott's been in a terrible wreck. Ray got in his car. He met Sandy at the hospital. They had been talking to the most important orthopedic surgeons in the history of racing, Dr. Terry Trammell. And so Dario Franchitti, dear friend, Tony Kanaan, everybody, all my race friends are all of a sudden on this, just to make sure. And great cooperation between the Level 1 Trauma Center and the conversations they were having. So they just stabilized. So we didn't do anything for 8 days. I flew back to Nashville, had surgery. And so great orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Philip Krieger, when I awoke, goes, here's what's up. Your left ankle went back together great, not worried about it at all. Attached the left tibia, I feel great about that. Your right ankle, different story. Shattered, I was able to put it back together. I'm very happy with the way that it went back together, but I did not reattach your right tibia. I'm like, okay. He goes, for the next 10 weeks, don't let anybody touch it, bump it, anything. You treat it like it's an egg. He told me also, he goes, Scott, if this were 10 years ago, I'd have hadn't taken it. But we've come this far. But you're not out of the woods by any stretch. There's a lot of damage. There's the whole thing. And so 10 weeks later, they reattached it. And I'm so blessed everything went back together.
He pushed himself to get back, and they told him he's probably not going to walk. And he's like, yes, I am.
I learned how to be a nurse. I didn't have to learn it, but I did learn it because I wanted to be his caretaker. And to watch his progress almost daily, you could see something that was a little bit better, was pretty incredible and remarkable. And I watched him have to do something that I didn't see before. And he had to trust that people around him were doing the best jobs that they could do because he was helpless.
I went to visit him at his house not a couple months after his surgery. He got through his rehab, and at the point he was still in a wheelchair overall, but he took great pride in walking to the front door to let me into the house. After we talked through what the experience had been like the last few months, he's like, I'm going to be back in it to win really soon. Not that he ever really got out of it, by the way. I'm sure he's one of those people who is still making cell phone calls from his hospital bed.
When I went to the hospital and I sat with him, it was like, who is this guy? He's this thankful, humble, happy to be alive. And that's Scott's like always bigger than life, always attitude, always, and so there was a day he came in and it was like, oh, there's that guy. And I knew he was back, and here we go.
Miraculously, Borchetta made a full recovery. Today, he even walks without what many drivers call the IndyCar limp, earning him a new level of respect around the racetrack.
We call that the old-timers limp. And yeah, he had it for a while, but yeah, he's you would never know now. You would never know, both behind the wheel and also just, in everyday life.
He is stronger than ever now.
Yeah.
And he's healthier even. He works out 5 times a week, sometimes a 2-a-day session,
Right.
And loves it. And nobody would ever know that, he busted up both of his legs
For sure.
and more.
Right.
They would not know that now.
We're at the Nashville Super Speedway. It's race day. You're about to, get on the mic in front of all these people and do the command. Today, when we're, walking around the racing world, seems like, everyone knows you. Everyone's coming up, shaking hands. Is that like something that, you take pride in? Because clearly you've been in country for 20 years, right? But racing is a little bit newer with you getting in. I guess, how does it feel to be part of the racing community at this
Really
point?
awesome, because this is a really tight-knit group, and you don't just get into this, especially in IndyCar.
Yeah.
And I take a lot of pride in being able to say that Roger Penske's a friend of mine, and Chip Ganassi's a friend of mine, and Meyer Shank and Larry Foyt, and the drivers. They know that we support the series, and I always feel great appreciation.
Do you feel like that dynamic has changed since your crash coming back? Like maybe earn some respect with drivers that know what that's like?
Well, that's an interesting point, because I have had several of them. I was surprised how many of them knew about my accident. And they've all had an accident at some point. Whether they had, tough injuries or not, they've all been there. So I think they did relate to me on a different level, knowing how bad it was and seeing my comeback, because whatever therapy and stuff they've had to do, it definitely, I hadn't thought about that, but yes.
Do you feel like, race day still fires you up?
Oh yeah.
You're about to fire up all these engines. Does that still get you going?
Absolutely. When they say, drivers to your cars, and that just brings everything back. I still get excited about it. It's race day, and it's championship Sunday. And yeah, man, I love it.
Though he is now the type of mogul who commutes in helicopters, private planes, and Ferraris, Borchetta recognizes plenty of challenges still lie ahead, including another potential change in the music business.
Record labels will become more of a service than really an ownership entity. We're going to be more marketing and promotion, digital marketing, etc.
If that is the case, there are few who can match Borchetta's ability to create spectacle.
You don't get and don't achieve what he achieved without just being an absolute badass.
He is always going to be a maverick and an entrepreneur and someone who wakes up in the morning going, how can I push the edge? How can I be different than everybody else?
He's tenacious and he's gonna outwork everybody, so he expects the same work ethic from all of us, and I love that.
Rule number one, more than ever, there's no rules. If we don't take you here, we don't get paid. I don't have a problem with that. I'm betting on you and me. But if we're gonna take you there, there's a value to that.
When you have somebody like that that's passionate about it, that's that's going to go get the job done, and like I said, can move the needle when they pick up the phone, that's what you want.
He just has such a keen advice for what he knows us to be and what he feels like the future is. He's able to communicate that to an artist, and that's just so important to be able to have that communication. It helps give us marching orders.
Well, I think about my own life and what's the next 20, very specifically, and it's going to be exciting.
Okay.
Yep.
Not giving away the hand.
Not a thing.